Here we are doing another little video. We haven't done one for a while. I've been away and my camera woman has been away. So we're going to make a tumbler. Now we make lots of tumblers at this time of year. Maybe standards are slipping and we all drink out of tumblers now. I know I do. I'd rather drink my red wine out of a tumbler than a wine glass. So we could say standards are slipping, or we could say it's old age and tumblers are more stable than wine glasses, so I knock them over less often. Either way, I make lots of tumblers. Now we make tumblers in lots of different designs. Well, not different designs, different colours. So you can have a set of tumblers that are all different colours and they will all sort of go together as much as handmade ever goes together. Remember, if you want them to be identical, there's well-known high street retailers that sell identical tumblers. So go there. Don't come and hassle me about it. So behind us here on the Marva, we have our mix we're using today. So this is we call it our Christmas mix, which is probably not politically correct to call it Christmas anymore, but it's our Christmas mix. So it's a mix of various different K3s and K2s, chips of different colour. Now some of these colours, in fact about half of them, are reducing colours, and this means that they have, within the colour, they have a bit of silver oxide. So when we finish the piece, we hit a button down here, and you hear a different noise and see flames come out the glory hole. And that means that we've cut the oxygen off, and the gas flames will want to take the oxygen from the colour. So we shall start. Put the iron up to get it warm. So the other things we need to check, we have our measuring bit of kit here, which is just a bit of MDF with tumbler written on it. So this is the length of my tumbler from blowing iron or necking in line to the bottom, and this is the width. Now I don't get too concerned if I'm slightly off, but I try and get them close. So iron's hottish. These are our standard iron, 25 ends to them. So a single gather. So in our pot here, as I'm sure most of you now know, there's a big pot of molten glass kept at about 1040 degrees. This is clear glass. It's only orange because it's hot. This is a pad of wet newspaper. It's a Daily Telegraph donated by my father-in-law. I'm not advocating that you should read the Daily Telegraph, but use it for that because that's about all it's worth. So I'm now going to heat the gather up a little bit because I just want to stick the colour on the end. So because I only want the colour on the end of the tumbler, I'm going to iron the sides out on the Marva a bit, which will cool them down. And then I'm going to lift the iron up and I'm going to roll the point of the gather in the colour. So the colour is now just on the end of the gather. I've got to heat this in. So what I'm going to do is turn the iron in both directions so that it doesn't swirl the colour. I don't really like the colour being swirled. I like the spots of colour to stay quite precise. Now because these are K3 chips, which means they go through a 3mm sieve, they take a little bit of time to melt in. And as you can see now, they are hot on the end. So I'm going to use the metal table, which is called a Marva, just to iron them in. Just going to push all the bits of colour that are on there left back in the glory hole. And then I'll show you why it's already gone wrong. So I wasn't quick enough clearing the colour up on the Marva, so there's a little chip of colour in the wrong place. So my decision now is whether to get it out or not. So if my camera woman comes over a bit closer, it's quite difficult to see because it's orange now. So I've got to wait till it gets a bit colder, but it's just there. So I'm going to pull it out and cut it off. So now I've just got to heat the bit back in I've cut off. When you're blowing glass, lots of things go wrong. That's operator error. You can have things that aren't operator error. You can have some bubbles in the glass. You have all sorts of things. That was certainly my fault. So never mind. So I've now got to melt that cut-in line in. So you can see it's all going smooth. Back over to the metal table. And we're back to We could almost cut that whole bit out of the video because we're back to where we were a few seconds ago now. So now I'm going to use the paper to make sure it's completely on centre before I even blow a bubble in it. So back to my chair, pad of wet paper again, and I'm just going to make sure this is absolutely on centre. I'm going to squeeze it off the iron a little bit, and now I'm going to put a bubble in it. So I'm blowing down the iron, my thumb is over the end, so if I've done it right, the air will expand as it gets hot and it'll blow out the bubble. You can just see the bubble starting there. So it's not quite quick enough, so I'm going to thumb it again. So you can see the bubble getting bigger now. So this glass is cooling down. It's still obviously red hot, but in glass making terms it's quite cold. So I'm going to heat it all up in the glory hole. So I'm heating all the glass up in the glory hole. So what I've then got to do is I've got to hang the glass down to stretch it a little bit, which will thin out the neck. So the neck of the tumbler, the top of the tumbler is nearest the blowing iron. So I've got to get this hot, and then I've got to blow it out and shape it. So the hotter I can control it, the more I can do on it. So back to the chair, hanging it down. As I'm hanging it down, I'm going to blow. And then I've got to put a line around it. This is where the piece of glass will come off the blowing iron. So keep it on centre. It's called necking in line or a cutting in line. And I'm going to blow it again. So generally, I'd make sort of 40 or 50 of these in a day. So I've got to cut that line in again. The better I can make this line, and the better I can make that slight concave curve, the easier the piece will come off the blowing iron. Now these are straight-sided tumblers, so this is my measuring. So I'm going to measure from the bottom to the cutting in line. So it's a little bit big. I've got to flatten the bottom anyway. So I'm now back, I'm virtually spot on there. I've got a pair of jacks with some wooden pegs on the end of them, just to straighten that up. So I've got to make sure the bottom's flat and the sides are straight to about there. So again, measure it, and we're virtually spot on. Now I'm going to use a bit of chalk around the bottom. So I'm making these on my own. I don't have an assistant here today. So I'll put a little circle on the bottom there. And this is what I'm using for my assistant. Oop, other way around. So I've got a file here. I'm going to wet the file down, get the excess water off, file around the cut-in line. And then this will knock off, and I can turn that round, other way. And you can see the circle on the bottom. Now I've got to attach another iron to that. So this is called a punty. So I can't mess around, but I've got a little bit of time. So I'm going to make a little button punty. So a little bit of glass on the end of my, this is a solid iron. I'm just going to iron it back up the iron, touch it on the floor a little bit just to cool the end down, and then come over here and I can attach that to the middle of my bit of glass. I can adjust it a little bit in there, pick it up, open the glory hole, and now I've turned the glass round. So if you see that now, you can see a little hole at the end of it. And at the moment, the little hole's got a black line around it, and that's because it's sharp, so the refraction isn't flowing around. So I've been doing this quite a long time, so experience will tell me a little bit. But I'm also watching to see that circle at the end move, get any bigger, or the black lines disappear and become an orange line, because I've got to open that up until it's a straight-sided tumbler. So it's very difficult to see on camera, but it's just going a little bit orange now. Now if you imagine where the actual neck in line is slightly thicker than the sides, because I've been touching it with the jacks, so I've been cooling it down just before I blow it. So the rim is slightly thicker than the sides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick my jacks in there, and I'm going to rip it open quite quickly to stretch the glass. So I'm stretching the glass out into my shape. Just make sure that the top's relatively flat. So I tend to do this in 2 reheats. So this reheat, I'm going to hit the button on the floor, and you can see the flames go a bit gassier, and hopefully I'll get a reduction at the same time as I get enough heat in the top to open it out. Now I don't want to get it too hot, because if I get it too hot, I could lose all the tension in it. And I quite like it having a bit of tension. So you can see, I made it straight-sided. I'm just going to go over the top to get it straight-sided. I'm not getting really anal about it. Now if you also look at the cards I turned, so you can see they're all quite shiny. And when we cool down, the reds and the yellows will come out a little bit more. And that's your Christmas tumbler. So there you go. Thank you very much for watching.